All right, let's dive into one of the most influential and honestly, one of the most controversial texts in Indian history, the Manusmriti. We're talking about a document that's been around for about 2,000 years, and it's got this wild dual reputation. On one hand, some see it as a guide to a perfect society. On the other, a blueprint for discrimination. So what's the real story? Let's get into it.
So this is really the big question, right? What was this ancient document really trying to do? Was it a genuine attempt to create a perfectly harmonious world, just like its authors probably wanted? Or did it end up laying the groundwork for a system of really rigid, deeply embedded inequality? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together today.
Okay, so what is the Manusmriti, or the Laws of Manu? Well, it comes from a whole collection of texts called the Dharmashastras. The easiest way to think about it is like an all-encompassing rule book. I mean, everything. It was written about 2 millennia ago, and it was designed to govern every single aspect of life. We're talking personal behavior, morality, law, even how to run a kingdom.
Now, if you want to really get the Manusmriti, you have to get to its core engine. There's this one single concept that drives absolutely everything else in the text, and that concept is dharma. But listen, dharma isn't just some simple list of do's and don'ts. It's way bigger than that. It's seen as this cosmic law, the thing that literally holds the universe together. But, and this is the most crucial point, in the Manusmriti, dharma is not a one-size-fits-all deal. Nope, your specific duty, your personal dharma, is completely tied to your position in society and where you are in life.
And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures the text's central promise. The whole idea was that the path to social harmony and even, personal salvation, it wasn't about individual freedom or chasing your dreams. No, it was all about perfectly fulfilling the specific role you were born into. Social order was everything. The individual came second.
So how exactly did the Manusmriti plan to build this perfectly ordered society? Well, it basically rested on 2 huge pillars: a super rigid social order, which is called Varna, and a very clearly defined role for the ruler, the king.
All right, let's break this down. Society gets split into 4 distinct classes, or varnas. You've got the Brahmins at the very top. They're the priests and scholars, the keepers of knowledge. Next up, the Kshatriyas, your rulers and warriors, the protectors. Then come the Vaishyas, who were the merchants, the farmers, basically the economic engine. And at the bottom, the Shudras, who handled manual labor and service. Everybody had their place, and every place had a function. And this is where things get really complicated. You see, while this system might have started out based on a person's function or job, over time, it hardened. It became this incredibly rigid hereditary caste structure. What that means is your birth decided everything: your job, your rights, your entire life. And there was no moving up, no way out. It's this transformation, this fossilization, that is at the heart of so much of the modern criticism leveled against the text.
So what about the guy in charge, the king? Well, his power wasn't absolute, not by a long shot. His main job was to be the protector of Dharma, the guardian of that social order we just talked about. He actually had to consult with his Brahmin advisors, and his power was really defined by his duty to uphold the law. And part of that duty? Using what the text calls danda, or just punishment, to keep everything in line.
But as you can probably guess, this blueprint for society casts a very, very long and controversial shadow. This is especially true when you look at its treatment of women and that rigid hierarchy. So let's turn the page and get into that legacy. You read a quote like this, and at first glance, it sounds pretty great, right? Where women are honored, there the gods rejoice. You might think, wow, this text really held women in high esteem. It talks about bringing divine favor just by honoring them. But, and this is a huge but, this is only one side of a very, very contradictory story. Because for every single line that seems to praise women, you'll find another one that just completely clamps down on their freedom. The Manusmriti is crystal clear on this. A woman must never be independent. Period. First, she's under her father's authority. Then, her husband's. And if he dies, she's under her son's. So that honor we just read about, it was completely conditional, and it was tied entirely to her role inside the family. And all of this brings us right to the heart of the modern critique, a critique really championed by social reformers like the brilliant Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Their argument is powerful. The Manusmriti isn't just some dusty old text.
They see it as the document that actually institutionalized the caste system, that legitimized all this inequality and even untouchability. It's what stripped women of their independence and cemented the dominance of the Brahmin class over everyone else.
Okay, so given all this heavy controversy and the fact that its rules are so out of step with our modern democratic values, you've got to be asking, why on earth should we even bother studying the Manusmriti today? It's a fair question.
Well, the conflict is just so clear, isn't it? It's like two sides of the same coin. On one side, you have a hugely important historical document. I mean, it's one of the world's earliest legal codes that tried to connect law with morality and politics. But on the other side, that exact same system is slammed for justifying deep-seated discrimination and inequality. It's a foundational text that's also seen as incredibly regressive.
So here's the key takeaway. We study the Manusmriti not to praise it, and definitely not to condone it, but to understand it. You just can't get the full picture of the historical roots of Indian law and society without it. If you want to really grasp the centuries-long struggle for social reform in India, you first have to understand the very text that so many reformers were fighting against.
And all of this leaves us with a really challenging final thought. When we look back at ancient texts like this one, texts that have these fascinating ideas about wisdom and justice, right next to rules that are deeply unjust, what do we do with them? How do we learn from their history without accidentally validating the harm they caused? It's a super complex question for sure, and one that feels more relevant today than ever.